This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show for you today. Army veteran Blake Hall will be with us for the interview. He's the co-founder and CEO of a little-known company you might have heard of, ID.me. That's right, the digital wallet used by more than 145 million Americans to make online transactions safe and simple. It's going to be a great conversation. Yeah. But first, what do you got for us, Joe?
I wanted to tell you a little secret. I miss Stacy. Like, you're pretty, don't get me wrong, but Stacy's my buddy, and I miss her. Now, we're thinking about her today. It's me and Adam, and I wanted to tell you, this weekend is National Oratorical Contest Finals. And if you don't know about that, what are you doing with your life? So the winners of all the state competitions will gather at Hillsdale College and face off in the final rounds of competition. Contestants who reach this level have an impressive understanding of the Constitution. This is probably a huge non-vocal minority because usually people who know less about the Constitution like to talk real loud about it, but these kids are legit. But in that spirit, I thought it'd be fun to share a few unique facts about the Constitution. So, the U.S. Constitution has 4,400 words. It's the oldest and shortest written constitution of any major government in the world.
See, that's a good little add-on right there. That is the oldest and it's the oldest and shortest written constitution.
And the shortest, yeah.
Wait, what do you mean? Yeah. There's no constitutions older than the U.S. Constitution?
I don't think there are active constitutions, or maybe even. I guess Constitution before was mostly like oligarchies and monarchies. So you don't. It's like I have divine right. Why do I have to write this down?
Okay, but it's the shortest written. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. And this is interesting because a lot of people just, the forefathers, when you think forefathers, nobody thinks of Jacob Challis, but the Constitution was penned by Jacob Challis, a Pennsylvania General Assembly clerk who was paid $30, which is about $1,000 today, technically $1,027 for a grueling weekend of handwriting. Probably had to find birds and pull their feathers out and do the ink with flowers. I don't know, but he wrote these words with a quill into 4 pieces of fine parchment for the delegates to sign. Could you imagine a typo? And you're like, hold up, I gotta redo this.
Oh yeah.
But the rush work meant that mistakes were inevitable, and Challis did his best to write in omissions between lines or scrape away mistakes and re-ink the correct information. On the last sheet, Challis inscribed a record of the insertion so that no one would think that these might be illegitimate additions to the adopted text. However, the most glaring mistake was added by Alexander Hamilton.
I knew it.
Yeah, you knew he was going to be a problem. When you have a musical, you've done some things, By the way, Hamilton's
the founding
awesome.
father without a father.
Yeah. Are you going to do the song? I'll wait.
Yeah, well, I know them all, so.
He's hungry, man. So as the members of the convention
I'm not throwing away my shot. Sorry.
He almost did here. Hamilton wrote the name of each state in the left of a growing column of signatures. When he came to the largest state delegation headed by Benjamin Franklin, he wrote Pennsylvania without the double N, so Pensyl. I feel like he could have fixed that. I don't know if I'm a.
You know what? I like him even more now.
Of fixing little turning an N into a E or whatever. I'm a master at that. But
first of all, no offense, Pennsylvania, but get an easier state name to spell.
Is this our
Texas,
fault?
For example?
But at 81, Franklin was the oldest delegate to sign. And although mentally sharp, he was in constant pain from gout, suffered bladder stones, and could barely walk. He was carried into the convention hall in a sedan chair, carried by 4 prisoners from the Walnut Street Jail in Philadelphia. I bet they still do that. Carry people around. But as Franklin led the Pennsylvania State House at the conclusion of the Constitutional Convention on September 17th, 1787, I don't remember that, he was approached by the Philadelphia mayor's wife. She asked him what the new government would be, and Franklin replied, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." sharp words, dude. Thus providing a favorite quote used by future Oratorical contestants. So be sure to check out legion.org this weekend for contest updates and tune into the live stream on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern or on our YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube and search for American Legion HQ, which stands for Hot Dog Queen.
You might even see a few videos of Joe Worley on the YouTube.
That's actually Stacy's nickname, isn't it? Didn't we establish that like episodes ago?
Hi, Queen.
Anyway. But that's it. That's all I got.
All right, Joe. All right, Alphas. Please stick around. We'll be back with Blake Hall right after the break.
Discover the power of your voice and form a deeper understanding of our nation and the principles that shape it. As a participant in the American Legion Oratorical Contest, you'll develop a deeper knowledge of the U.S. Constitution and a greater understanding of the duties, responsibilities, rights, and privileges of American citizenship. As you step up to this academic speaking challenge, you'll learn leadership skills, the art of oration, and have a shot at winning up to $25,000 in scholarships. Seize your moment. Visit legion.org/oratorical and take the first steps towards shaping your future today.
Hey, today we are joined by Blake Hall, co-founder and CEO of ID.me. Blake, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thanks, Joe. Great to be on.
Yeah, Blake, it's great to have you, man. Really honored to have you on the show. Excited for this conversation today. But before we get into all things digital identity, deep fakes, and everything, all the amazing things that you've been working on at ID.me over the years, tell us a little bit about your time in the service. And did you ever think that recon patrols in Mosul would lead you to multi-factor authentication? That's the real question.
Yeah. I think like a lot of infantrymen, I had no idea what was going to happen to me other than what I was told to do. And so yeah, just real quick, grew up in a military family. My grandfather, was an amazing soldier. He had 66 months in combat from Anzio as a Browning automatic rifleman to Korea, 2 tours in Vietnam. So he was a command sergeant major when he finished, like big boots to fill with that guy. My dad enlisted, then went to West Point, was a colonel and brigade commander. And so, I just felt like I had to serve growing up with men like that in my family. I love America. I just want to give back. I did Ranger School, airborne, passed my expert infantryman badge too, which I'm maybe more proud of than the other ones. And then I was, after 5 months as a rifle platoon leader, I was picked up to be recon PL, and I ended up, I think, like 27 months of PL time when it was all said and done.
Wow.
But yeah, so back to Mosul, I ended up running kill capture missions in Iraq from 06 to 07, Mosul, a little bit of like Lake Tartar on the outskirts of Fallujah, all of Baghdad, and then Karbala, running against a guy named Qais Ghazali, who's working with the Iranians and is still a very bad dude. And so when I was in Mosul, I mean, it was we had one hit as we were doing close target reconnaissance to use SIGINT, where one of the NSA guys was like, he's like, "Hey, sir," he's like, just be careful. Like this Al Qaeda commander is marked as extremely hostile and dangerous. And I was like, dude, like what Al Qaeda commander is not extremely hostile and dangerous?
Yeah. Fair enough.
Most of the ones I've run into were really chill dudes.
Yeah, super chill. Like, this guy, he's like moderate Al Qaeda. So anyway, so we end up, it was actually, it turned out to be my first firefight. Like, a few minutes later, you always pay for hubris. I had AK rounds stitching a pattern above my head, like cinder block in my face, like got the 50s online. We started rocking. And the way that story ends is, I get back to Fob Merez in Mosul, and Major Green's like, "Lieutenant Hall," he's like, "Come with me." I was like, "Okay." So we walk up this hill overlooking Mosul, and he goes, "What do you know that's different about East Mosul versus West Mosul?" And I looked, and I was like, "Well, sir," I was like, "East Mosul appears to be much darker than West Mosul." And he goes, "How many guys were shooting at you?" I was like, 3. But they were really bad. And he goes, you knocked out the power to 1 million people. and I was like, I'll try to fire it down next time. And he goes, you do that. Like, what? So the net of it is I had no idea I was going to end up in multi-factor authentication or identity proofing. I was like trying not to destroy, half of a major city over like 3 Al-Qaeda guys that were shooting at me.
The power grid was looking at you funny, though. I mean, you can't let stuff like that slide.
Yeah. It's like, hey, man, they shot at Lightning Platoon. There's got to be a bracelet there.
They probably thought they were being attacked by Thor.
Yeah. And we actually had videos later where we could see the Transformers blowing up. And I was like, oh, man, maybe.
That had to have been terrifying.
So is that the rotations where they extended to 15 months? Were you on one of those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you get the news while you were on the 12-month that it turned into a 15th? Or,
my guys found out from their wives or from Fox News because it was supposed, so a few things happened. Like first, we were in Baghdad at the time, living in tents, which is miserable, and then found out that we were being extended. Some of their wives called them and was like, "You're extended," so they were pretty upset about that. The Alaska guys in the 172nd had been extended before us, and they actually had battalions that had gone back or were in Kuwait that were pulled back. That was pretty crazy. I think the poor captain, rear detachment commander had cupcakes and furniture being thrown at him by the military spouses. And they were actually so bitter that instead of leaving their Xboxes and TVs, they destroyed all of them with hammers.
Sounds about right.
And then our brigade commander, who I love, he's now then Colonel Townsend. He ended up becoming a 4-star General, Stephen Townsend. Wow. He gave a speech about how in World War II, guys didn't get to come home until the war was won. And I will just say that speech did not go over very well.
That sounds like it was a bit.
I can imagine.
Missed the vibe a little bit.
I replaced the unit I went to out of flight school at Fort Riley, the 1st Combat Aviation Brigade. They were 07-09 rotation to Iraq, and they got extended, while they were there. So, when I came in as platoon leader, you always hear about the last deployment, right? Yeah. Where, men were men and, the real gunfights were happening and, real things, real lives were being laid on the line and hero work, and it's just these glory tales. And, but talking about, the extension unknowingly, going into a 12-month there and then being for a 15, what a psyop, that must have been for those guys.
I ended up feeling very fortunate about 15 because at first they were indefinite 18 or 15. So it ended up being that 15 was, the best case. But I felt so bad. My platoon sergeant had 4 kids under the age of 10 with his wife, who's a high school sweetheart. And they were having real problems with their marriage. And we had figured out, based at the end of his deployment, he had gone on a previous deployment for 12 months, then the 15. So something out of the last 42 months of his life, he had spent 27 of them in Iraq with so that's the human toll on the family. It's brutal.
So did you stay in much longer kind of after your deployments, or what was kind of your trajectory, out and what was your route kind of after transition?
I think as soon as the PowerPoint ratio went up and, if they let me be a platoon leader and just be with my guys and kick doors, I'd have probably stayed in for forever. But as soon as the PowerPoint stuff, I was like, no, I'm good. So I left active duty in 2008. I was an officer in the reserves till 2011. So supported European Command and J5 plans focused on the Baltics and Russian aggression. But that was, it's more boondoggle than not. I would usually go over to Stuttgart and these colonels would be like, dude, go out and bring back great stories. So it's okay.
Thank you.
Everybody was kind of hoping, that by the time we hit the Jetsons time frame, that we'd be using lasers, not laser pointers. But...
I know. There's that one slide where General McChrystal had the famous remark. It was if somebody can explain that slide to me, we'll win the war in Afghanistan. Yeah.
And I do remember having one of those little laser pointers that, all the officers had. So you could hit your talking points and you could put it in? Yeah.
They gave you a laser. Is that part of standard issue uniforms now?
No, you're required as a leader and officer to equip yourself with a laser pointer that works.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I was pretty frustrated too, because like a third of the high value targets that we ended up catching at great risk to ourselves, they'd already been caught before and released. So we caught like one terror cell in Mosul that that we were forced to like return back and like let him go in the streets. And I remember the brigade intelligence officer was like, Lieutenant Hall, he's like, we have all their biometrics and stuff. And I was like, sir, like, we're in a war. They're trying to kill us. We have them captured now. Like, what does it matter if we have their pictures of their face? Like, if they put in a bomb and it kills somebody, it was insane. So
I don't remember signing the Geneva Convention. Do you?
I was not present, but whoever drafted up,
I wasn't there either. I mean, they didn't seem to care that I was a
with that brain of yours, Lieutenant?
I know, but it was just the like height of bureaucracy, where it's like,
yeah,
dude, we run a process here, and I'm like, aren't we trying to win a war and like not keep our guys safe? So that bureaucracy triumphing over common sense stuff was really crazy, and I think is a huge problem within the military still today.
Well, I mean, I think though, when you go from like when you Mustang in, you get to see both sides of that, where you do things that just work, and then politics, whether you like it or not, gets introduced. I think that's why so many guys want to be war fighters, because everything makes sense. You do what makes sense when you're at war, and that catch and release program, we caught Fallujah and let it go. Like, like that stuff is just something that is a deep wound for many people. I was there in 2004 the first time.
Yeah.
And it's a deep wound. And so, we walk away from that stuff. Some of us roll away from it. I lost a leg over there, and a bunch of people I really love, not to be dramatic, but like many of us have, and even when we come home, some of them still don't make it. They come home and they touch American dirt, and then they just never quite get out of it. And they don't always make it.
Yeah.
And so, we hate that. We don't like leaving people behind, and kind of a weird transition here, but that no man left behind thing, I mean, that's what you do is kind of a powerful extension of that military value, that no identity left behind, and I'm really curious where that transition happened between you having that mindset and having to deal with the bureaucracy that we've already sort of touched on, into what drove this mission to do this?
Yeah, of course.
ID.me.
Well, I think like two things, and it was super personal. I viewed it as an extension as taking care of my guys, which I carry the lives of my 32 scouts and snipers and attachments every day, over 450 combat patrols, and I still view my job as it's never ended. I still love those guys that I served with, and so two things. One, veterans suffer from identity theft at about 80% higher the rate than the typical American, and we all know why. Our social security numbers printed on literally like every document that we have. I still get mail that comes in that's got my social on it, from different agencies. And then the second thing was, there just was a lack of awareness in terms of getting benefits to veterans. Like, there was a ton of goodwill, but it was really hard for organizations to help people find out about it. And I'll give one example. So a bunch of my guys have been stop lost when we were over in combat. And Congress actually passed legislation retroactively that if you were stop lost, you got like an extra $1,000 of combat pay. And I think the average benefit per service member is about $5,000. Now, some marketing manager at like the Department of Defense got this tasker, which is like, go find veterans, who are stop lost. But now you can't put the news out through the first sergeant, through the gunnery sergeant, through whatever, because a lot of them have gone back to civilian life. And so after 2 years passed, about 250 million of the 700 million in funds that have been allocated expired, simply because veterans weren't aware of the program. And all they had to do was literally go to this form, fill it out. You get a check for $5,000. That's it. Like, no strings attached. And so,
do you have that information still?
Well, so, right. I mean, Congress extended it for 2 years and it expired. And I just remembered looking at that, and between the identity theft and looking at $250 million of combat pay that went unclaimed but was earned at great cost and sacrifice that impacted my guys, I was like, well, I I know a lot from spending, a year and a half with these national security agency guys about telecom networks and graph databases and everything else that they had taught me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I know where they're at. They're shopping. And all these brands that have military discounts, if we can make it safe for those brands to offer military discounts online, then that's where I can figure out who's a veteran and who's active duty and who's a spouse. And if there's these tremendous like civic programs, like the Legion started the GI Bill, in the post 9/11, or then we could become a conduit to let those veterans and service members know about programs. And in fact, I think right now, as we speak, I could, through IDME, email 7 to 8 million veterans like now.
Wow.
So if there was a similar program, we are effectively the digital first sergeant, if you will, getting the news out. And that's what I've dedicated my life to once I saw that there was just a big gap in terms of keeping people safe and then making their life easier.
It's such a pain because you have to have a, Healthy Vet has one login, and then, you've got one for DOD, you've got one for, and so by the time, and they all have to be secure. And then, half the time they make you change your password. And I mean, look, there's not enough Post-it notes in the world for me to keep up with all my logins. There's just not, man.
Well, that's the surprise part, is that what we're doing we're creating a digital twin to your physical wallet, and managing passwords is the worst. So part of having a wallet, which is a portable login, and having your data tied to it, which you control. We, unlike all of our competitors, I think all of them, like, we don't sell data. We sell trust. You control your data. When we're done, you'll have a single login you can use across whatever website you visit. And then if you want to, and you give consent, you can release data that helps you access that. And while there are like things like DS Logon and My Healthy Vet, the analogy I would use is it's kind of like a store credit card versus a Visa card. Your wallet would be insane if you had to have a credit card that was only useful at every store you shopped at. The whole point of Visa is that it can go everywhere you want to go. And that's exactly what we're on a mission to do with the digital wallet, to make life safer.
Are you saying that I should combine my Radio Shack, JCPenney, Sears, and Macy's cards into one card?
And Joe actually still shops at all those places.
I wish I could.
I haven't heard Radio Shack in
I'm going to go to Circuit City later if you guys need anything.
Get some books from Borders.
Oh, that won't hurt.
One question I have, and it's kind of a light question, but it's a deeper meaning. What was harder, Ranger School or raising venture capital? And so, like, I heard, like, during your military career, work with the national security agencies, going out on high value target ops, kind of expose you to the world of SIGINT, intel, biometrics. And then, your leadership trajectory, kicking in doors, being responsible for the men on your left and right, and wanting to do right by them. And then you just seeing this kind of problem set. But there's also like the ability to kind of, see into the future, because the timeline that you started to think about these things and breathe these things online, obviously not many people were, at that point. So what was kind of like the complementary, business, origin story kind of trajectory for you? And, oftentimes, the grandiose vision, isn't the ultimate end state, because there's so many turns along the way and deviations. So, but you did have an idea, you had an initial prototype, and you got initial traction. Can you just talk about that a little bit? I always love the origin story. Yeah.
Well, I think, you asked about Ranger School. I think the through line is grit. I was a Winter Ranger. Like, my report date was January 10th. So it was not fun. And by the time I'd gotten to Florida phase, so in mountain phase, I'd gotten some like poison ivy, and I was like, please, like, give me some steroids here, because I'm super allergic to it. They wouldn't give me steroids, and it spread all over my body, and the medics were like, oh my God. So they gave me steroids, but then it weakened my immune system. I got bronchitis, and still to this day, like, I got my go from the hardest grader in mountain phase. He had like a 12% go rate for platoon leaders. Sergeant First Class Davis. Love that guy. He's a great teacher. He actually gave me a quote. He said, I asked him, I was like, you're different. I was like, you don't yell, you don't scream like the other Ranger instructors. And he looks at me and he goes, Ranger, never mistake my kindness for weakness. And I love that. And I found out later the other RIs were like, he actually has the lowest go rate of all of us. So anyway, so I end up, jumping into Florida phase. I remember I was so miserable. I went in at 195 pounds. I weighed 162 pounds. I had poison ivy. Like I couldn't hardly breathe. And I just remember when I went out the door, I was like, I don't care if my chute opens or not. Like I was that miserable. I did not care. And that's also when I realized I would actually die before I quit. I will not give up. And that lesson that Ranger School taught me, where I'd much rather go back to combat than go to Ranger School again, because it literally pushes you to your limits, where you understand what you're made of at your very foundation. And once you know that, it gives you tremendous confidence to know that, like, I might bend, but I just don't break. I think business is different because what you always have a team in the military, you always have resources. You don't have any of that, really. Like, it's never felt more alone. And you have to scrap for everything. You're trying to build your team, convince customers, like build a product, raise money. There's so much more context switching and tasks you need to execute on. But I think the cool thing about America that makes it really wonderful is there's a lot of people who don't work for your company that end up being part of your company because they want to help you and they believe in your mission. And that's where, it's kind of like the same ethos that goes into like the American Legion. Like, people just want to give back to a community they care about. And if you just kind of put your passion out into the world, there's so many other people that just for like nothing, they just want to help you win and like believe that it's going to make a positive difference. They end up spending a ton of their time to help you. And so I was very fortunate. Kelly Purdue, who's still on our board today, is a former Army intel officer, Ranger qualified, all that good stuff. He's like my big brother and like took me under his wing and like really mentored me. But yeah, it's the grit, it's mentorship and trying to build a team. And I think the main thing is, the other through line is learning. Can't remember if it's Ben Horowitz or Mark Andreessen. He said the best entrepreneurs have strong opinions that are weakly held. And I've always looked at entrepreneurship as a legal form of insider trading. Like, the more experiments you can run and the more learning you can do, then you start to see things about the market that are true, that are not intuitive. And that's exactly how we became really effective at our kill capture mission set, targeting these vehicle bomb networks. We would do our AARs, we do our hot washes, and we'd be like, what worked, what didn't? And over time, we started to get like ride-alongs from Green and DevGru, and they're like, what are you guys doing over here? And it's just all learning, learning together as a team. And so when you do that, then I was like, oh, I'm doing this for military. But then all the brands were like, it's not just military. They're like, it's students, it's first responders, it's teachers, it's truck drivers, it's McKinsey consultants traveling on Gmails. Like, can you help us with all of those? And then the government's like, why are we making Americans create a login and reprove their identity with a credit bureau? Like, let's just have them create one secure login. And I was like, well, that's what I'm already doing. And then I was like, oh, VA maps to veterans and education, and FSA maps to students. And I was like, oh, wow, this could be like the identity layer, like PayPal, but not for payments, for it, like a true twin to your digital wallet. But that was all lucky, I guess. And part of the
time frame, what years are you kind of starting to connect the dots on all this?
So I started the company in 2010 as an academic project at Harvard Business School.
One does.
Rangers lead the way, baby.
Let's go. I was actually playing Call of Duty, and my buddy Brian Kaufman like calls me, and he goes, "Hey man, David Tisch is in town." So the Tisch family like owns the New York Giants and like half of the parking garages in Manhattan. And David was the first managing director of Techstars New York, and he's like, "David kind of heard about what you're up to, wants to meet with you. Are you busy?" And I looked at one of my rugby buddies, like Anthony Bengay, and I'm like, "Dude, like, no offense, but we're gonna like shut this down here." I went down to Boylston Street in Boston, got coffee, and like after 30 minutes, he wrote me a check for $25,000.
Wow.
So yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
That was a great validation moment.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then David's the one who introduced me to Kelly Purdue, and one of my classmates, I still don't know why, like wrote me a check for $80,000. And I was like, hey man, like, look, my jobs have been paperboy, lawn mowing business, lifeguard, getting shot at. Like but it was amazing. Like people put their trust in me, and I think in the same way that in combat, I just didn't want to let any of my guys down. I've never wanted to let any of my friends down, and it's been terrifying, but also like kind of amazing where that road has led because they believed in me.
Well, it's really beautiful, man, and it's like the right guy at the right time with the right idea, with the right support system, around him.
Yep.
With the grit of a ranger that's going to bend but not break, and he knows that. And then I also heard, the team that's around you, right? And that can be your military team, the veteran team, that can be your family, that can be your coworkers, your alumni within the school, and then like the ability to keep learning and growing and not being like complacent, and having like the mixture of all those things together allows something special to happen.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And also, one, I'm still wrapping my head around strong opinions weakly held. Like that's such a way that's something that you could say that someone who understands will understand it, and someone who doesn't will never.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting way of putting it. Number one. Number two, that trust that people, as veterans, a lot of times we get hung up with this mindset of having trouble performing outside of pressure. But pressure comes in a lot of ways. It doesn't have to be someone holding a gun in your direction. For guys and girls who've got their head on right, that pressure comes from performing for the people around you. For making sure that you're not the weak part of a team. And we get out of the military and we have this tendency to island ourselves, and we're outside of our team, but we're still trying not to be the weak link. We're the whole team.
Yeah.
And so, despite how weakly held that strong opinion might have been of what you wanted to do with this, you built a digital solution that works across many platforms. You saved me $50 on a radar detector 3 weeks ago from Uniden, like shirts from GovX. Like I had, when I started reading your bio, I was like, this is the dude. I probably owe this guy $500 because who's really going to send a copy of your card to, you're not going to do that.
Yeah. If you remember the Oakley Standard issue, we had to like mail all this stuff in before deployment. And
oh my god.
Now we're the login for Oakley SI. Great company.
But you've done this from everything from federal benefits to private services. What are some of the biggest challenges in getting the government and tech to work together on identity verification? Because how is that even possible? Who do you have dirt on? And the reason I say that is because I was making a joke for you got on. You have just enough dirt to not get disappeared, but still get stuff done. Like
Yeah. So
give me the breakdown here, man.
Yeah. And so I'd say two things, like Joe, on the first part of your comment. I think purpose team conditioning is really like what gets people like locked into meaning in the sense of like, you don't question your purpose when you're serving the United States military. You have a great team, and like the intimacy is kind of off the charts because there's no greater forger of bonds than shared suffering. If you want to form a group of friends, make them suffer together for some common cause. It doesn't matter if it's basic.
I'm so mean to my kids. I'm a pushover.
Closest sibling.
Way to go, Joe. You're doing it right. Parenting done right.
Parenting I would not like. Okay. So, but then the thing is, like, all the conditioning, that the military puts you through is really because like combat's brutal. And so you don't want to show weakness, and like, you don't want to do it. And then you leave, and actually like some of the guys that were just unbelievably brave, one of my snipers who would like laugh and walk around in firefights, had PTSD. And like, when he admitted to it, they took his weapon away from it. Like, and he's like, sir, he's like, I feel like, I won't say, let's use some colorful language, but, and I was like, dude, that just kills me because a lot of folks are looking for purpose that is equivalent to what they felt when they wore the uniform. They're looking for their new team and community, but the conditioning, because we're all prisoners of our past, the conditioning has kind of taught them all the wrong lessons, that like you don't verbalize weakness and like you don't share. And if you're injured, you just like suck it up and like move through. And I think a big part of my role as a leader has been like making it okay. And that the actual more courageous thing is to express when you're hurting and need help, because we're not getting shot at right now. And there's actually like there's a different battle that we have to win together to take care of each other and make sure that we all have like great lives and great families, like after we served. You asked about like government versus private sector. I think the frame, so Simon Sinek is now a friend. He's actually done a lot of work with the military too. And we talked a lot about the law of diffusion of innovations, is the theory that Jeffrey Moore popularized this into a book called Crossing the Chasm. And all it really means is like nature's a bell curve, right? Everything, athletics, whatever else, like you're going to have your elite, you're going to have your left side, most everybody's in the middle. The same thing is true though with customers in really every sector. You have your early evangelists, you have your early adopters, you have your early majority. The thing that distinguishes those segments of the market are what they believe. So we were very fortunate, like at VA, for instance, there was this, two things happened. There was a tremendous leader who came in, and that was Bob McDonald, also a Ranger qualified officer, Vietnam veteran. He had been the CEO of Procter & Gamble. And when he came into VA, he looked around, there were 500 plus veteran facing websites, many of them with their own login interface. Do you know how many VA facility locator apps the VA had purchased? Anyone want to take an over under on that? This literally the same.
I don't want to look like an idiot, so you can go ahead and surprise me.
Too late, Joe.
I hate you.
That's how I know you guys are friends. Like, yeah.
I just met this guy like 20 minutes before you got on.
How many, Blake?
That's 40. 40. So this is like in 2016, 2017. They had 40. So I'm like, man, that contractor, that dude like figured out life, where he just has resold the same app to different parts of VA, 40 times. I'm like, so it's funny, but it's not funny, as you know. And so
I would have guessed 8 or 10. I mean, I'm not joking. Like in my head, I almost said it. But like,
yeah,
I don't want to overdo it in case it was like 7.
40. So there's like Conway's law is the theory that you end up shipping product to your customer based on your bureaucracy and your org chart. And what Bob McDonald said was, hey, listen, veterans don't know about, VHA versus VBA or whatever else. All they know is VA. And what every other modern company does that has different divisions and functions is they just have like one website, like USAA.com, and then all the services are behind that. So when he came in, he said, we're actually going to change our orientation from inside out to outside in. And we're going to have a veteran-centric approach to design and to how we deliver services. And that really has been the initiative that was vets.gov for the first few years, now is va.gov. Is let's have a single digital front door for VA. So the first thing is leadership starts at the top. He was the right secretary at the right time. And then Marina Nitsa was there, and she, reached out to me, and she's like, I've heard great things about the company, what you're trying to do. One of the first things we need to fix is login and single sign-on. And I was like, well, I've already got about a third of the community using, our login across nonprofits, in the private sector. Like we were doing the Institute for Veteran and Military Families at Syracuse and VetTix and everything else. And so I was like, my vision at this point has been like, let's just create, in the same way that I could use my military ID card when I went to Lowe's to get on base, like wherever, why can't we just have a digital wallet with a digital credentials that lets you do the exact same thing? Same wallet, same credential, different access permissions, different risk. And she took a risk on me because she believed what I believed, which is that you shouldn't have to manage all these different logins. You shouldn't have to share your social security number and your DD-214 when you're trying to prove that you served in the military to get 10% off. You should only have to prove that you're a veteran. And by the way, Apple and all of our customers now feel the same way. They're like, we don't want to see someone's SSN or incentivize somebody to display a form that has that sensitive PII in the store. We just want to know, like, are we being defrauded or not? And so it's really about the people and what they believe, and whether they're in private sector or government. If you can find people that believe what you believe, you go all in. And if I talk to people at different agencies that they're like, no, we got it, we're good. It's like, it's our login, it's our brand. We don't care if they're managing different then I'm like, all right, thank you. Because that's actually more helpful. I'm like, you're the late majority. I will get to you at the end.
But when you realize what I'm bringing to the table, come crawling back, buddy.
That's right. And so a lot of people were skeptical, but then, we did it at VA, and then like Treasury and Social Security said, wait, your pass rates are what? And your fraud rates are what? And then the IRS piloted us. I think we had substantially higher pass rates, way lower fraud rates. Then that led to like a deal with the Treasury, and now we're at the front door of Social Security. So it's kind of like everything else in life. If you do a good job with what you're entrusted with, like if you do a good job with your platoon, there's a decent chance you become the scout platoon leader and stuff. And so I think once you get into an industry and like you let people, people give you responsibility for something, you do a good job, generally you get more work. That's what always happens to people who are good at what they do. And that's what really happened to us, starting with VA, and now we're at 20 federal agencies.
I think it's absolutely remarkable to hear, and I love what you said too about being able to find the early evangelists, the early adopters, the early majority. But the other thing too is like all you can do is the absolute best that you can do any given day in any situation. Yeah. And if you're giving it your all, 110% to the highest standard, I think that model is going to win out over time, and some pretty remarkable Herculean things that can build off that solid foundation, like you just kind of sequenced and told us where you're at now. So I mean, I'd be interested to hear a little bit about your take on kind of where we're at now, like in the world that we're living in this rapidly fastly changing kind of AI centric world. How is the landscape changing, if at all, from your perspective, and maybe even being able to kind of map it into some of the practical things, that our listeners and Legionnaires could kind of do to themselves.
Yeah.
Versus like a more, visionary kind of like casting the wide net of the future of where ID.me is going.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about how I view AI maybe at a 30,000 foot level, and then I'll break it down into both threats and opportunities, if that makes sense. So AI, like what OpenAI and some of the bigger companies like Anthropic are doing, is they're creating these foundational models that are just incredibly good at inference. And inference is just judgment. It's just like what you would see with actually a really good flag officer, like General Petraeus. Like that dude's really smart. But the thing about judgment in algorithms is that it's only as good as the data that you feed it. If you were trying to make a decision and you're really skilled at something, but you saw the unknown unknowns and you don't have full context, you don't have the data points, that judgment layer doesn't actually really get brought to bear unless it has the context it needs in order to make the right decision. And so a big part of what we can do, and what we do as an identity company, is we structure data in a way where, it's not an identity graph, it's a trust graph. Because if it was just identity, then anyone could self-assert that they were military. And I think there's this thing that like at any given time on dating sites or the internet, there's like 6 million Navy SEALs, but there's only like 60,000 in real life. So unfortunately, like we wouldn't exist if people just always told the truth. And so what we offer is trust to say, no, like you can believe Joe or you can believe Adam, because we actually checked against the Department of Defense or against Veterans Affairs or the National Archives. And they said, yeah, like this data does in fact match a service record. And if Joe or Adam is willing to share, one or more attributes, maybe just starting that they're a veteran, or based on need to know and context, there might be a different payload with like VA, then great. And so really the opportunity is that once you have clean data and once you have these powerful inference models, you then create the conditions for agents. And that's where I think you could almost have like a trusted buddy where you're like, hey, based on my disability rating and where I served in combat and my skill identifier and like how long I served, what benefits am I available for? and you could just ask it and then it would tell you, right? So that's where these foundational models with data could come back. And you can already see it happening with kids. Some younger kids are like, what's Google? We just ask ChatGPT. So I think that's what I'm really excited about, is that, at the end of the day, the veteran is always in control. You're always in control of your own data. So you don't have to opt into anything if you don't trust it or don't want to do it. But if there's like an AI agent company that says, hey, we've mapped out like all the veteran benefits and everything else, and if the Legion were to do that, and if we have all the attributes that you served, and then, veteran, retiree, whatever, disability rating, whatever, there's some really powerful outcomes. And the Legion could be at the forefront of that, given since Paris and World War I, you guys have been serving and leading the way yourselves. We see a ton of stuff on deepfakes and identity theft tied to biometrics. Like we see Chinese threat actors that are using like stolen personal information. I've made a post on LinkedIn if you want to check that out, but it's pretty brazen. So there's both threats that are enabled by AI, where scams and everything else, these large language models are absolutely fueling that, where our machine learning models are playing defense to keep people safe. But on the making life easier side, what I just went through, I think there's just tremendous opportunity to do some cool things.
That's really cool, especially to hear you lay it out like that. So you're thinking, because the intersection of how you connect to all these government and private companies, and the way that the verification goes, that the data models and the judgments are almost there to be able to put these veteran-centric agents at the intersection of those that could be customized for VA, for Legion, for whatever the intended output or desired outcome is, and that we're very close to being able to realize that.
Yeah. Imagine like the best claims officer at the American Legion, that if you could codify that into a model, right, where the foundational models already have the judgment. So it's really just about, like, we have the veteran attribute side, but you all understand the benefits from the GI Bill and everywhere through. Yeah. And like, how many folks know about the VOC rehab program, or like burn pit eligibility, or like all the stuff? And so if you could literally just say, hey, this is kind of me, and I'm willing to share this with the Legion if you all will tell me about the benefits that might be relevant to me. That level of conversational OS, I think, especially for older veterans, would be amazing. You don't need to be super digitally literate. You can literally just ask it a broad question about, like, what do you think is relevant to me based on my age and my, all my veteran stuff. And it could like tell you by order of popularity what those programs might be.
So one interesting follow-up to that is, how do you, how would you kind of assess the change in the dynamics to the people that are involved to be able to kind of make that a reality, right? Because those things are done manually by, individuals, today in different departments or whatever. So some of that, would essentially go away, but then that would create new opportunities within management, within the system.
Yeah. I think there's usually like no shortage of work to be done, so to speak. And I think, again, like focusing on, our North Star is always like, what's the best thing for veterans? The Legion's in a pretty profound place to like map out all the different benefit programs that are out there and the intricacies. And whether you were to train a model yourself, or I bet an OpenAI or Anthropic would actually like love to partner on something like this. Oh, yeah. The data set that we have on our side, because what we bring is the authentication identity proofing. So the first thing is like, is Joe Joe? Is Adam Adam? Once
sometimes I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Permission doesn't matter unless you know who you're dealing with first. So what you need is authorization. So we would say, hey, Joe, or hey, Adam, is it okay for us to use like your kind of veteran and your military service record with like an American Legion, AI agent, yes or no? And so the first thing would be, if you say yes, that agent can then help you drive awareness of programs that are relevant. The second thing, though, is like, if you want to apply for those things, that's where our acceptance at different federal agencies, like the organization actually trusts us to confirm that you're you and authorization, you could actually be like, hey, apply for that program for me, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where if we have the data and the authorization, because we know that you're you, those AI agents can not only help you find out about it, they can be like, oh, that burn pit program sounds great. Can I apply for that? Done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
and this time next year, there'll be somebody that looks like a real person that you can have a conversation with. I mean, we're already where it's fairly conversational. It doesn't feel super weird. I know people that are weirder than the conversations I'm having with. And we've got to get ahead of it. And whether you agree with it or not, this is something that if the military and if our people like us don't get a hold of this, we need this knowledge, because I think that especially with the identity threats that we're having to deal with now, and what you personally with ID.me is going to have to deal with in the next, 3 to 5 years with AI doing what it's doing. Like,
it's already crazy.
If you're not already learning about this stuff, you're well behind the curve. If you're not already using this stuff, you're behind the curve. And
that's right. The thing that I'm a glass half full guy because I'm an entrepreneur and I think technology is great. The cool thing is that the more that you can both increase the quality of outcomes and automate away work, then your manual resources, they actually have more time to focus on the people who need help the most. This is kind of like if you have toll booths in the Easy Pass lane, the more people that go through the Easy Pass lane, the shorter the line at the toll booth for everybody else. And so maybe an imperfect analogy, because right now what we're talking about really is more like white glove concierge service. If you've got 10 agents that are people waiting to help people as like claims officers, and instead of the line being like 100 people long, it's only 10 people long, then they're all paired up one-to-one with maybe the folks who don't trust technology or don't want to deal with it at all. And that's actually good for everybody. The 90 people got amazing outcomes and very fast service, and the 10 kind of old school guys got dedicated concierge stuff, same level of resources. And that's really what the field of economics is about. It's the efficient allocation of scarce resources. And I think we can make everybody better off through AI, even for veterans who don't use it.
You know what I feel like?
Scarce allocation of resources in my house is steamed dumplings. I gotta buy them, and I gotta eat them for the kids get a hold of them.
It's my oldest daughter, same thing. She loves these dumplings, and she'll
know what it is.
I
watched Kung Fu Panda, and it changed my life. And then those are like Bao. Those aren't even the same thing.
There's some deep life lessons in Kung Fu Panda.
There is. Okay, Jack Black is a philosopher.
Blake, I feel kind of like we're back in 2010, and it's talking about an idea of what the future could be. And it's really exciting because, just like in 2010, where you've been, what you've done to be able to be there to have those conversations. And then, 15 years later, here we are, talking about this as we're looking at what it could be, and knowing that you're the guy to be able to take it there. So it's a real honor to be able to have you on here and have this conversation, talk about it. Joe and I kind of have a little fun lightning round for you, the Blake Hall edition, before we wrap. So one to one or two sentence, responses, whatever you want. I'll go, and then Joe will go. We just got 5 for you. They're easy. So the first piece of tech that you ever fell in love with?
Oh man, like Sony Walkman.
Oh, the yellow one?
That's a good one, man. Great. All right, what is the meaning of life? No.
Dumplings.
All right, most underrated leadership lesson from Ranger School that applies to running a business.
Oh, caring about people. Leadership starts with caring about people.
Like it.
What's one cybersecurity habit you wish more people took seriously?
Password management.
It's got to be.
So you mean like changing your password regularly, or doing good passwords?
So the same password for every platform isn't a good thing.
It's kind of why I started the company though too, because so it's job security, but like writing all the passwords down, in a piece of paper, and like it's in a drawer somewhere, or like reusing the same password everywhere. Only like 14%.
I put a question mark at the end of it, Blake. No one will ever guess that I did that.
Yeah. Look, I can't even remember my passwords. How are you going to remember them?
Yeah. Is it Michael J. Fox Rocks, like question mark?
Oh, I love this guy. All right. So you got to brief Congress, pitch something, you've got to do a pep talk for your team. What's your walk-up song?
Oh my gosh, Many Men by 50 Cent.
Oh, you and Donald Trump.
Snap.
Yeah,
I am
great.
on board, my dude.
before DJ T walked out to it, but like,
I am hyped up for you right now, just imagining that.
yeah, let's go.
Joe's is a flash dance. Anyway, that's a different story. Okay,
Yeah.
your ID.me login can get you into any place in the world. Where are you going first?
Oh man. I think MGM. Like I'm obsessed with this idea that like we already do the check-in at MGM, but you get to your room, you could drop all your stuff, you could just walk to the pool, right? You look at a kiosk, it shows you your favorite cocktail, your age is verified, your payment, everything else. You hang out with your friends, you're not worried about your wallet in a cabana somewhere, and then when it's time to go back, there's another kiosk, you look at it prints your room key, and you go back. And I think when just you are your identity and can just walk around and do stuff without worrying about physical things, that'll be pretty cool.
My wife's a twin, so get ready for that one.
Security, trust, and a personalized experience. That's
Yeah.
pretty, yeah.
All right, and last one, what's next for ID.me? In one word. No, I'm joking.
I think so. Like a have I been pawned for fraud? Just like, so have I been pawned is a website you can check if like your password's been breached, and with all these like text scams.
That's
and
gamer speak too, right? Like PW, like pawned. Yeah.
So what's next is we can become the fraud clearinghouse. That if there's like a website where you're like, whoa, that thing tried to get my login credentials, or someone texted you about your toll bills being unpaid, or a package, or your IRS stuff. We like if you could go in and be like, either our fraud team confirmed it as fraud, or like 100 other people reported it as fraud within like ways, that scam feature is going to be really important to keep people safe.
Outstanding, brother. We appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. I feel like we could have done this for another hour easy.
For sure. Easy.
But as you know, when you got people, you want to take people's time seriously. And we'd love to have you back sometimes, because I think that a year from now, these conversations are going to be very different. So, we'd love to set you free so you can start thinking about, what's next. But before you sign off, is there anything that you want to share with the Alphas that we didn't discuss, that we didn't go over, that you wanted to touch on?
Go Army, beat Navy.
That's
right.
rough,
man. This is I'm outnumbered. It's not fair.
OD green every day, baby.
That's good. That's all. No, pleasure. Really awesome to spend time with you, Joe and Adam. Really enjoyed it. And if folks want to save money and be safe, just go to ID.me, and that's what it's there for.
Awesome.
Right. So ID.me, is that anything else you want to share? That's the website.
That's
any
it.
other websites you want to promote here? Like
no.
Quit trying to force him to push a bunch of websites, Joe.
Blake, I sent him a list and $20 on PayPal. I don't know why he's not saying the things I sent to him.
Blake, has been absolutely fantastic having you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for a bit and sharing about this remarkable journey of solution-oriented service that you've been on. Excited to see where you guys continue to grow. I think you got a beautiful vision for the future. Thank you so much for visiting us today. You're the right man for the job. Alpha, stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
Hey, be willing to show up for a veteran. Be willing to trust your gut, follow your heart, and take a risk. Be willing to sit without saying a word, without checking the time. Be the one who's willing to ask, to guess wrong, to even offend another, to keep them safe, to remind them that they are valuable. If you know a veteran, be the one to reach out and make them a part of your life.
We hope you had a great break. Now it's time for Joe's Scuttlebutt.
Today, we salute Ronin, the hero rat who set a Guinness World Record for detecting landmines.
Way to go, Ronin.
And Ronin, we love you. What a cool rat. Before Ratatouille, there was Ronin-atouille.
Oh, that's a good sequel.
Mm-hmm. Or a prequel.
Or parallel universe.
Landmines remain an ever-present danger on battlefields, both for soldiers and in active conflict and civilians once the war is over. Millions of anti-personnel landmines are buried around the world, and while groups work to remove them safely in recent years, they've turned to a novel tool to help. and that's rats, like Ronin. And one rat based out of Cambodia has now detected more landmines than any other rat in history.
Why do they have to tell us
Ronin.
that the rat's based out of Cambodia?
I mean, because, you know,
He's a
there's
ba-
a lot
like
of
his
different...
nationality matters.
Listen, it does, and I'll tell you why.
You know, these Cambodian rats are different. All right, why?
So I was in D.C. This was about 3 years ago. Actually, I was in Maryland. It wasn't quite D.C., but I was in Maryland. And I had made friends with one of the homeless gentlemen that was that would ask for
Joe,
money.
how
and
long is
food.
this story?
About 25 minutes, if you keep interrupting me. So he had one leg, so we jibber jabbered a little bit. And the next day, I walk out and I look up and I see him and I wave at him. And as I wave at him, the largest rat that I've ever seen in my life ran out from something, went around a tree, got some piece of trash, and disappeared. And when I say this is the largest rat I've ever seen, it's the
Swamp
kind
rat.
of rat where, as a one-legged guy, you walk 100 yards to the other person who saw it to see if what you just saw was real. So I walked over there and I was like, is that because that was where he'd hung out. So I'm like, surely you've seen this rat before. And he's like, I have never seen a rat like that in my life. And he lives on the street. So I bet that was a Cambodian rat, dude.
Not a Cambodian rat.
It was a Cambodian rat.
That's a New York. I hear they're as big as
Yeah,
cats.
he actually might have come down from New York. Could have been an opossum, but I'm from Georgia, so who knows?
But Ronin's Cambodia.
Yeah. So Ronin has detected 109 landmines and 15 items of unexploded ordnance since 2021. I got a buddy named Shellhammer who just found one. I haven't talked to that guy in years. I hope he's okay with me saying that. But according to...
Wait, is that his nickname or his last name is Shellhammer?
I'm sorry. What I meant to say was not Shellhammer. Fantastic dude. But
Shout
according
out,
to
not
both,
Shellhammer.
Yeah, we love you, buddy. Feel free to call me. I'll buy you lunch. APOPO, the charity that trained the African giant pouched rat, in the Guinness Book of World Records, which declared Ronin the new record holder. He's currently working in Pria Vahir province in Cambodia, one of the most heavily mined countries in the world, and not diamonds. We're not talking blood diamonds. It's just blood.
That makes sense.
The Guinness Book of World Records announced Ronin's achievement on April 4th, which was coincidentally International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action and World Rat Day. That's weird that those things coincide, but we'll take it.
That's great job by the PR team, by the way.
Serendipitous.
That's a great find right there.
Yeah, that'll get brought up in the movie. Ronin, who works with a handler in the field, set the record for work done between August 2021 through February 2025. He's one of... How long do rats live?
At least 4 years.
At least 4 years. So even with landmines? I feel like I'd get 3 weeks into that, and Joe'd be a goner. But he's one of dozens of specially trained rodents active in locating landmines for demining efforts. Rats such as Ronin are trained to sniff out chemicals in the explosives. Their hard work also lets them cover distances at a quicker rate than a human with a metal detector, according to researchers. That sense of smell also means they focus on chemical compounds and don't get potentially misled by random bits of metal. And they're also trained on a grid system. And when in the field, their small size allows them to find and get to the landmines without setting them off. Ronin and other rats only work 30 minutes each day. That's the dream. That's the dream.
It's a hard 30 minutes, though. It's a hard 30
minutes. Ronin's record includes 38 more mines than the previous record holder, Magawa. Wouldn't you hate to have to come out of retirement just to get your record back?
I just like how they're keeping records of these things.
I think it's pretty cool. So in a 5-year career, Magawa detected 71 landmines and 38 other unexploded ordnance in Cambodia. In 2020, he was awarded a gold medal from veterinary charity for his efforts. And Magawa died in 2022 at the old age of 8. So there we have it. 8.
Well, why do we got to end the story on his death?
Ronin is still going strong and has sired thousands of large rat mine detecting children.
one of the things I was thinking was why rats, and it's because it's better than the metal detector.
Look, if they're good enough for the plague, they're good enough for the mines.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks, Joe. That was illuminating and enlightening. But you know what? It's been a while since we've handed out a Bravo Zulu. I don't know if you know that. So I want to recognize the Legion family in Lugoff, South Carolina. Shout out. Members of the Larry Jeffers American Legion Post 195 in Lugoff, South Carolina, are helping children in their community improve reading comprehension through patriotic instruction and lessons in manners and etiquette. In April, the Post presented Dobby Mill Elementary School with $1,500 and American Legion youth publications on Americanism, patriotism, and flag etiquette. While Auxiliary Unit 195 presented the school with poppies and a lesson on their significance as a symbol of remembrance. When school reading interventionist April Dixon attended a Post meeting to request assistance, the Post unanimously voted to support this program for kindergarten to third grade students. In addition to providing funding and supplies, members have also volunteered to visit the classroom to help teach students basic life skills such as giving proper handshakes, table manners, and tying neckties. As longtime supporters of Kershaw County Schools, youth sports, and program members of the Post 195 Legion family are enthusiastic about this new opportunity to get involved with their community. I know you can maybe look at that and be like, handshakes and table manners, but I feel like this is something that's probably very much needed in many of the school systems. And I know like Americanism is a part of the Legion values and programs and our way of service. And so I think this is such a cool way, and sometimes it just takes somebody to show up and just bring into the awareness that like, hey, there's an opportunity, and like remind people, remind members of oh yeah, we can go and show up and we could do that, or we could proactively, go and put something like that on, because
I
the
mean, and
value of
it's
showing
not.
up.
No, I'm saying it's not forcing anyone to do it. It's a skill though. Being
Mm.
able to flip that switch on and shake hands and be professional and learn not to fidget, like having the capability of doing that is a skill, and being able to teach it to others is, I think, a fantastic thing. I know that every what you got there.
So this is an award I was given for my son's school.
Oh,
It's a
cool.
little Statue of Liberty, and it's actually said it was made from, came with a certificate and everything. It's pretty cool. It said it came from some of the reclaimed materials from the restoration on the Statue of Liberty, but it was for this nonprofit program that was going on in my kid's school, where they nominated, parents to come and speak and, talk about, and there were certain, principles, and it was, nominating like, kind of hometown heroes, to come and talk. But there was a whole program about, just like Americanism values. So I got to go to like the final production and go with my son up on stage and, get the award, which is special for him and for me. But I'll tell you, to be in the auditorium with the third, fourth, and fifth graders, just to see this like beautiful program of trying to instill, these values of patriotism, of leadership, of accountability, and having these kids go through this, and then kind of take this pledge to be like an upstanding, like good citizen. And I was like, man, what an incredible program this is. This should be. It's just through an Alabama nonprofit, and they do it in the different schools in the region. But I was like, this is something that should be replicated in every school. And so I think this is really cool, what they're doing here at Post 195. Bravo Zulu to all the folks in Lugoff. We'll have a link to the story in our show notes, but you can also find it on legiontown.org, along with other stories of what Legion members and posts are doing across the country and around the world. You might find some great ideas that you can implement even in your posts. So thank you so much, Bravo Zulu, and we'll have the link in our show notes.
Outstanding. Thank you, Adam. All right, Alphas, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel on Sunday morning to catch up on the National Oratorical Finals. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/ Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next
We'll
week.
see you next time.
We'll see you
I mean,
next
next week.
week.
Next time, next week.
Next week. Okay, you can have the, go ahead.